Erev Tov, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third and final event in our three-part speaker series, We Shall Not Be Silent, Conversations on Race in America. Thank you for zooming in tonight. I'm Rabbi Michael Rogozin of Congregation Shirat Hayam, where I'm blessed and grateful for the extraordinary work of Tzedek LaKol, Justice for All. Our team focused on achieving racial and social justice within our congregation and community. A brief thought for tonight. Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe. Incline our ears that we may hear. Open our hearts to understand the reality which we witness, and inspire our hands in the proper time to act together for righteousness in love. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
I think, Barbara, over to you.
Thank you, Rabbi, for those beautiful words. For those joining us from across the North Shore and elsewhere, we want to introduce ourselves as conveners of this event. Located in Swampscott, Massachusetts, Congregation Shirat Hayam offers multiple pathways to Jewish life, learning, and prayer so that all may feel welcomed, connected, and enriched.
Tzedek LaKol, Justice for All, is a Shirat Hayam member-led group who organized in October of 2020 in response to ongoing issues of racial and social justice facing our country. We focus on achieving racial and social justice within our congregation and community, and are committed to collaborating with others through action and educational programs, confronting injustices, and pursuing equal and equitable rights for all.
Tonight's event, Racial Justice, Local Perspectives, Local Impact, marks the final event of our three-part speaker series called We Shall Not Be Silent, Conversations on Race. Our series has focused on and centered these necessary conversations by examining racism and racial justice through national, Jewish, and local lenses. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. Our event will include 30 to 45 minutes of discussion, followed by 10 to 15 minutes of audience Q&A. Attendees may submit their questions using the Q&A function in the webinar. Questions will be screened by a member of our committee and provided to our moderator to ask during the Q&A session. This event is being recorded and streamed live on Shirat Hayam's Facebook page. The recording will also be posted to the Shirat Hayam website after the event. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Jerry Kreitzer, a Shirat Hayam member and co-facilitator of our Tzedek LaKol group. Jerry is a former educator who served as Vermont State Representative for 5 terms. Jerry, we're delighted to have you here with us this evening to help us explore how we can make a local impact in service of racial justice right here in our community.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Rabbi Michael. I'm honored to be here tonight, to have this opportunity to be in conversation with a prominent leader in our community. We started our speaker series with a national perspective on racism from Governor Duval Patrick. He was able to share with us experiences and insights, as well as his perspective on the progress that has been made in his lifetime. He pointed out, building bridges begins with listening. Our second speaker, Rabbi Berenbaum, helped us to understand what responsibility we in the Jewish community have in relation to justice for all. Her message was that knowledge without action is like a tree with shallow roots. Our speaker tonight is someone who has established both deep roots and broad roots in our North Shore community. He has a lot of personal experience in terms of what it is like to be a Black man on the North Shore, insights as to what is working in terms of relations to racial justice, and a lot more. Reverend Dr. Andre Bennett is the youth pastor at Zion Baptist Church in Lynn. He is a graduate of UMass, Endicott College, and Atlantic Coast Theological Seminary. He has been involved with Essex County Community Organization, or ECCO, since 2013, and is presently the president. In 2015, with the police shooting in Cleveland of Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old Black boy playing with a toy gun, and the failure of the grand jury to indict, Reverend Andre felt compelled to action and has since expanded his work to include many communities, including the LGBTQ community, the immigrant community, and low income. So with that, we're going to get started. Welcome, Reverend Andre. Thank you for being with us. I know that you have had a long journey returning from Seattle just this morning, and hopefully you've gotten a little rest since then, but I bet you haven't.
You know, thank you very much, Jerry. Thank you to everyone. Good evening. Listen, Jerry, you're right. I got in, my plane landed at 6:45 this morning. I rushed home. I had an 8 o'clock meeting and I've been going since, but I feel up to it tonight. So let's get it going.
Good. All right. Well, we should share with everyone why your journey, because Reverend Andre is getting ready to be a grandpa, and how exciting that is, and how excited I am for you with that.
Thank you, my brother.
What a wonderful blessing is, and I already gave him a mazel tov when I spoke to him last.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And I you know, Jerry, if I may, I found out that I probably am going to be that grandfather who, you know, my daughter is going to have a lot of problems with when she needs to get her child. But hey, what can I say?
I would expect nothing less from you. Okay, so let's get started. There's no question you have had a fascinating story of coming to the United States. And I think it would be helpful for all of us to hear about your journey and how that impacted your family, your education, and your professional experiences. So if you could just fill everyone in on that journey that you took to get here.
Sure. Thank you very much, Jerry. And again, thank you. Good evening and welcome to everyone that's here. You know, this has been a powerful speaker series. And because of the time difference last week, I missed the live action, but I did go back and view it. So that was great. Yeah, I came here 12 years ago. Actually, Saturday marked my 12th year being in the United States of America. And initially it was supposed to be for 18 months. The plan was, you know, Faye, my wife, at the time, I had just completed her master's degree, and there was this organization that came to Jamaica and they were recruiting special education teachers because that's her specialty. And, you know, we had a discussion and we decided it would be best if she took the opportunity. And so it was supposed to be for 18 months. Well, after a year, well, less than a year really, the bi-coastal marriage didn't quite work well. And so we started having conversations about what to do. We looked at the pros and cons, and, you know, we were doing very well or well enough for ourselves back home, but the social conditions, you know, for our children growing up was not necessarily ideal. And so we decided, all right, I was going to come with the kids. I was going to spend, you know, the additional 18 months that she had left on her visa. And then we would reevaluate where we are and we would return home. 12 years later, I'm having this conversation with you from here in the United States of America, which means I didn't go home. But it's been an interesting journey, to say the least. The first time in my life, and I hate to jump out the gate with this, but the first time in my life, I felt, I knew, and it was made abundantly clear to me that I am a Black man was about 2 weeks after coming here, and I had an interaction with a police officer, and the way with which I was treated and spoken to, I realized that this could not just be the ordinary. We came here on a visa. Faye was on an H-1B, and I was on the H-4. Myself and the kids were on the H-4. That's the spousal dependence visa. And one of the stipulation of the visa at the time, I don't know if that visa is still, I think that was one of them that was cut out, was that the spouses of a H-1B holder cannot work for the term of the visa, which is a 6-year duration, cannot be gainfully employed, but must be enrolled in school, and must do at least 20 hours of volunteer service with some kind of reputable organization. And so I threw myself into school. I found 2 weeks, I was searching for stuff, and I found a hospice in Middleton, and from my volunteer services there, I was connected to Follow Him Interfaith Choir, which is building bridges through music, and I was exposed to the Lynn community there. And the journey from then to now, with the exception of the education and the professional development and the personal growth, the journey socially has been pretty much the same. Understanding and feeling like I am not necessarily considered a first-class member of community, but I am other, I'm an other. And that played out in, just little things like, traffic stops and how I was spoken to in traffic stops and stuff like that. And we will get into that further. But the dramatic effect or impact that all of that had on my family was primarily my son, who at the time when we came here, he was just 5+ going on 6 years old, and just seeing how different the culture was here, how differently his father was treated, has had a profound impact on him.
Following up on that, you took the opportunity, so you got educated, right? Became a minister. Tell us a little about that journey.
Sure. So I was a licensed minister before I came here. I was licensed at the age of 18 years old, and I was ordained, I think, 5 years later. And my ordination took place here at Charter. My ordination took place here. When I came here from Jamaica, I'd already completed 2 bachelor's degrees back home. I was in my first year of my master's program. I had a pretty accomplished life. I'd worked in corporate Jamaica for a while, did pretty well for myself, switched over into education, started an adult learning center, and things were on a decent path. I came here thinking, okay, I'm coming with a bachelor's degree in education and a bachelor's degree in business administration. I can just matriculate into university and earn a master's degree with whatever master's degree I choose. No, I found out really, really quickly that's not how it is. So I had to start all over because just the amount of money for document interpretation, and please pardon the distraction behind me, my laptop is dying. Just the amount of money for document interpretation and all that translation and all that stuff, Faye and I decided, you know what, let's just go. Let me just register for North Shore Community College and take it from there. I did, I first did a certificate program at North Shore Community College in developmental disabilities, and won a scholarship again from North Shore, and I went on to do the associate degree. I went on to UMass Lowell and completed my master's, started my EDD program at UMass Lowell and completed it. And I was elected to serve on the board at TABCOM, which is the American Baptist Churches of Massachusetts. And I remember my first meeting, there was a committee that I served on called DDMT, Discipleship Development Training Ministry. And I walked in the room in Groton, Mass. I walked in the room and everybody around the table were introducing themselves, and they were all Reverend doctors. They were all white men, all, the youngest one there at the time was about 55 years old. And I thought to myself, my God, if I am to stand a chance in the American Baptist churches, I've got to step my game up. And so I applied to seminary while I was at UMass doing my EDD in psych. I applied to seminary and simultaneously completed my EDD, my THD, and my DMin, my Doctor of Education, my Doctor of Theology, and my Doctor of Ministry.
Whoa. More than I would want to take on, right? How wonderful, though. It says a lot about who you are. And, in our discussions, you've talked a lot about your work as sacred work of justice. I think it would be helpful for people to understand what that means in terms of the sacred work of justice. I think that would be helpful.
Sure, and thank you for that question, Jerry. I'm from Jamaica. Jamaica is a deeply conservative Christian nation. And the Baptist faith make up for about 60% of the religious groups and religious organizations within Jamaica. The Christian faith makes up for about 89% of all religious and tribal practices in Jamaica. And so it was always embedded in me that if it's the ministry, it's the ministry. If it is politics, then it's politics, but the church and politics, they don't mix. And anything that is not preaching, singing, or teaching the Bible, the scriptures, is considered politics. It's not ministry. And so for many years, I was very tunnel vision. I had my profession, but ministry was also a major part of my life. And so I came here with that mindset. I started serving Zion Baptist Church 10 years ago. My 10th anniversary was this month. And the first thing I declared when I stood up in the pulpit, I'm not getting involved in the race conversation. There is no race war in America. There is no black versus white. There's good versus evil and love versus hate. What a fool I was, really, though. What a fool, now that I look back at it. It wasn't until my son, who came here at 5, we came here in April, he turned 6 in September, started seeing and noticing stuff and would have questions and had nightmares about some of the things that he experienced while we're driving together. I would go into Zion some mornings and I would have mothers telling me about their kids that were, arrested for attempting or what seemed like shoplifting, even though it wasn't, just things like that. And I think one of the things that really moved me, there was this kid who, I think he was 14 years old at the time. He was going to a private school in Lynn, and he took an apple. He was sitting in the lunchroom, and across the desk from him was one of his classmates, who's a female, and she's a white girl. And he took an apple out of his lunch kit, and I guess he was looking directly at her. And they said he seductively licked the apple and bit into the apple. And that kid was kicked out of school for sexual harassment, and the thing went into court. This is a member, because they're no longer here. They migrated to one of the southern states. This thing was in court for over a year, and it finally came back at 16 years old. This kid was being asked to register as a level 1 sex offender for that offense. And I'm thinking to myself, I remember meeting with this mother every single week, and she's crying because it's a lot. And I'm thinking to myself, there is no way that I can be preparing people for heaven, because that's what I'm doing, right? I'm preaching the gospel. I'm preparing people for heaven. How am I going to prepare people for heaven when they're living in hell, literal hell here on earth? And I started having these little moments, these little aha moments of truth, and that brought me to a place that the work of justice, it's not political, it is sacred. It is human. It is a part of who we are. It is one of our rights as human beings. And there's no way I can separate someone's spiritual self from what is going on in what we in the Baptist tradition call their temporal self. That's for me when I coin the term the sacred work of justice, because heaven is what we make it, true. And so my goal is to make people's those that I serve, make them experience, help them to experience even a minute slice of heaven while they are here physically.
That leads me into the next question, which I think is a very important one in terms of, you've talked in the past, and I've heard you talk about the fact that all of us need to have a personal reckoning, right? And that we need to look at ourselves first in order to do this work, in order to really achieve justice, that takes a reckoning. And I think that really resonated with me when I heard you say that. There's looking at my own life and having to reckon with the inequities that I've seen, and when I heard you say that, what a beautiful way of looking at it, because without question, we have to look inside before we can look outside.
Absolutely. And that's a hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing to do. In essence, what I'm asking you to do, Jerry, and those other people that are on the joining this webinar, viewing us, listening to us, what I'm asking you to do is to step outside of everything that you know and hold to be comfortable and true to yourself. That's what I'm asking you to do, and to see the world through the eyes of those who are suffering discrimination and otherism and oppression. How I got to that place, again, my mind was, I was tunnel vision. I'm all about family. Well, I'm all about God, Jesus, and family. And ministry. That was my vision. And I remember when Mike Brown was murdered in Ferguson, and at that time I was just developing a reputation, if you will, and I was getting calls from different states and different federations and different organizations to go down to or out to Ferguson, whichever direction it is, to go to Ferguson. I'm not good at geography, and I didn't respond. I turned down all the invites. I turned down all the requests. And I remember we were sitting in this very living room, and my daughter, who is making me a grandfather now, my daughter said to me after about 3 weeks, she said to me, Dad, and my daughter primarily calls me Dre, D-R-E. She primarily so whenever she says Dad, I start worry, because it's either a bill is coming my way or a reprimand is coming my way. She said to me, Dad, why did you not accept any of the invitations to go to Ferguson, to stand up in Ferguson? And I said to her, I did not want you and your brothers to think that shoplifting is okay. Because remember, that was the narrative that was out there as to why Mike Brown was murdered. So I said to her, I didn't want you and your brothers to think that shoplifting is okay. And I felt that my presence would be sanctioning that action. And my daughter sat quietly and she listened. And there was an awkward silence for about 2 minutes. And then she said to me, she said, well, can I tell you what you did, Dad? And I said, well, sure. She said, in your attempt to communicate to us that shoplifting is not okay, by not going to Ferguson to stand up in the face of this kind of injustice, she said, what you did was inadvertently confirm to us that it is okay to murder someone, that the punishment was suitable. And what a gut punch that was for me. Because the whole time, all I'm thinking about, I want my kids to know that you work hard, you make a life for yourself, you do the right thing, you walk on the straight and the narrow. And my daughter rebuked me in that moment. She said, I hear that, and we know that shoplifting is not correct. We know that all these things are not right. But what we also know is that it is not right for someone to be murdered for an accusation. There's no actual proof. An accusation was not, and for me, it was like, okay. All right, so clearly I'm on some BS right now, because here I am trying to build this nice little bubble for my kids. Here I am trying to tell my kids that if you play right, if you live right, if you play by the rules, all is gonna be well. And my kids are sitting and they are watching innocent lives be taken daily by those who swear to protect and serve us. They are watching kids who look like themselves being murdered, being sidelined, being redlined. And for me, I didn't want to have that conversation with Shay when he got to that age. I did that wasn't a conversation I wanted to have. And I also wanted to send a message to my kids that, okay, there comes a point where you have to step outside of what you think, the world that you create for yourself, because you have, you might have some pull to your name, you might have a few bucks in the bank, you might live in a nice area, doesn't mean that that is the reality for everyone else in the world. And the harsh truth is that we as people of color, as Black people, it doesn't matter how hard we try, it doesn't matter how well we do for ourselves, we are always going to be playing catch up. And unfortunately, sometimes in the game of catching up, we are deemed a threat and we're taken out. And that for me is what personal reckoning really is.
Well, as you say that, and I think what we are doing as a community is trying to reckon with that bubble that we have all lived with. We have heard the stories about what's going on. We watch the news, and I think, unfortunately, it took too long I'll talk for myself, to step out of that bubble and say, it's not okay. This is not okay. This is not what we believe. This is not what I believe, that we must speak out. That if we do not, then it is allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
So without confronting injustice, you are really supporting injustice.
Yeah.
And I know for you that's hard because you come from a family, right? Your mom was a police officer, right?
My mom was assistant chief, is what we call him, superintendent. My mom was assistant superintendent of police.
Right, and so the respect you have for the law, and that's one of the things that I admire in you, that you have been willing and able to work with law enforcement to say, let's work together, let's listen to one another, let's cooperate and communicate. And I think that is the type of message we got from Duval. I think it's the type of message that we got from Rabbi Birnbaum, that we have to listen to one another, right? And we have to act. That there's a big difference between saying you're anti-racist and walking the talk.
Absolutely. And here's the thing that I say to people all the time. You don't need to be a Reverend Andre Bennett. You don't have to stand out there on the front line, put yourself at risk. I do it because up to 5 months ago, when I found out that I was having a grandson, my son was the number one reason, and still is the number one reason, because I want him to have a certain kind of future. I stand out there, I put my body, I put my life on the line, because I don't want my son to experience some of the things that I've experienced. Now I have a grandson that's coming in about 5 weeks. I don't want him to experience the things that I've experienced. That doesn't necessarily need to be your truth. If it's not your truth, it doesn't have to be your truth. But there are ways that we can step outside of our bubble, Jerry. There are ways we can align ourselves with organizations like ECCO that are on the ground doing the work. We can align ourselves with the North Shore Zen Center that every Monday night find ways of how to hold accounted city officials, hold them accountable, elected city officials accountable. We can align ourselves with organizations that are doing the work, that are supporting justice, that are standing up against injustice. We can give up some of the money that we have. We can give up some of the niceties that we have. We can speak to our city officials to say, you know what, I've been looking around in my city, in my town for some time now, and it looks very white. I think we should start doing something to diversify. Or there are many different ways that we can step outside of the bubble. But you said something that is absolutely critical. We cannot continue to sit on the sidelines and we get sensitized when something like a George Floyd murder happens and everybody's scrambling to be a part of a movement, and then a month or 3 months later all the movements die down and the work is left on the shoulders of those of us who are feeling the pain. White privilege and white power is something that is very, very real. And let me tell you something, I am one of those people who is not afraid to call upon white privilege, to call upon white power, to stand with me, to support me with your finances, to support the work with your bodies, to support the work with your privilege. And those are ways that some of us, most of us, all of us can step outside of our bubble, if you will.
Okay, and as you talk about the North Shore, I think it's important for people to hear your perspective in terms of what is going on in the North Shore. What's the realities of the injustice in the North Shore? And you already talked about ECCO, but I know that there are other programs that are making a positive impact. And as we start searching for ways that we might connect, I think it's important to hear from you about, first of all, what is the reality? And secondly, what's going on that we might be able to connect with? We've talked before and you said, don't go out and do something that's already being done because people are already doing it. And I think that rang with me as a truth, that if people are doing it well, let's figure out how to support them. So both the first question about your perception of the North Shore in terms of racial justice, and also those programs that you see as doing the right thing and that might need some help.
Sure, thank you for that. So let me first say that ECCO, the Essex County Community Organization, and of course I'm the president of the board of directors, so ECCO is very near and dear to my heart. ECCO is the only county-wide federation, I want to say probably in the country that I know of, that organize across the entire county, not just a specific city or town. And ECCO has emerged a national leader amongst community organizing federations. Faith in Action, which ECCO is a part of, well, MCAN and Faith in Action, which ECCO is a part of, oftentimes point to the work that ECCO does when they're holding trainings and when they're looking for an example as to how to start, penetrating the systems of injustices. I'll share just briefly what's going on the North Shore. I was pulled over. Reverend Andre Bennett, and if you're living on the North Shore in 2020, let's not say 2021, in 2020, and the name Reverend Andre Bennett is not a name that you have heard associated with the Black Lives Matter movement and community organizing and racial justice work, something's wrong. But I've been pulled over in Swampscott. I've been pulled over in Marblehead. I've been pulled over in Beverly. I've been pulled over in Manchester by the Sea in 2020, and asked in all of these instances one single question: are you lost? Okay, I didn't stop a police officer to ask for direction. I've been pulled over and asked these questions. Are you lost? Do you need help with something? Okay, that's the reality of the North Shore in 2020. It's not yet happened to me in 2021. Let's knock on wood. Hopefully it won't. But that's the reality. When you think of the economic injustices that the North Shore faces, when you look at a town like Swampscott, and then you cross the line over into Lynn, and you see the wealth gap that happens among these city and this town. When you go over into the Marblehead, these are what we call bedroom cities and towns. You know, primarily people live live there, but they may work somewhere else. You know, the wealth gap is unimaginable. But step away from that just a little bit. Think of again, someone like myself who gets pulled over asking if I need direction, get pulled over asking me if I need direction because I do not look like I'm from around the area. I don't know, Jerry, what it looks like. I couldn't look at you and tell you what area you look like you belong to. I'm just not trained. I'm just not trained. That's not the training that I have. And if that is the training that our police department has, then that in of itself is a major, major issue. There is work to do. Our undocumented siblings, understand this. I am an immigrant from Jamaica. I'm a green card holder. I'm not a citizen of the United States of America. Nobody leaves their country to go to another country to be treated less than. People leave their country, go other places in order to find a better way of life. And the only reason we need to leave our countries to come to the United States of America is because our governments have been destabilized by interferences of the United States of America. And as a result of that, a lot of our countries are either poverty-stricken or crime-ridden. And in Lynn, just last week in Lynn, ICE officers were at CVS Pharmacy asking people who are trying to get COVID tests for documentation, which means our undocumented siblings can't get, they're scared to go get COVID tests because if they go to get COVID tests, they're probably going to be picked up. The most shocking thing, I sat with the then chief of police in Lynn, and he educated me about what happens when ICE calls in to say they're coming into the city to pick up someone. And according to him, the then chief of police, who is now the county sheriff, according to him, this is standard practice across most of the cities and towns on the North Shore. ICE calls, they call the police department, they say, we're coming to 106 Central Street to pick up Andre Bennett. What the police department does is send out one of their officers to 106 Central Street to do what is called a courtesy booking. So they courtesy arrest whoever that person is, take them in, book them, ICE comes, pick them up from the police station, and there's never any further communication between the police department and ICE to find out what happened to that resident. These are things that are happening here on the North Shore. You know what I mean? If someone like me gets pulled over because my driver's my sticker, my car sticker is expired, and I get arrested for it and granted bail at $700 for my expired sticker that was coming in the mail. I get arrested for driving my car, but my assistant, who's a white person, is asked if she minds driving the same car that I just got arrested for driving. These are the things that are happening here on the North Shore. Massachusetts is, you know, we blow the bullhorn how liberal of a state we are and how progressive of a state we are. The people that see the liberalness and the progressiveness of the state are not the Black and the brown communities, are not the communities of color. The people that see, Jerry, and my friend, my brother, I respect you, and I think we've been building a beautiful friendship over the past months. The people that see the progressiveness, the people that feel, I'm not saying that you are, but are the ones who look primarily like yourself. You know, the white white individuals who might come from or have an address or a zip code that speaks affluence. These are the ones that see. And so we have a lot of work here to do. However, I do want to say, again, I go back to ECCO. I can't stop giving ECCO kudos of the willpower that ECCO has to be penetrating these systems and trying to create the beloved economy where every person in our community, Black and brown, people of color, benefit from the wealth within our community. Equally so, where no one is left standing by themselves. There's a Beverly, no place for Salem, no place for hate, that continues to work for equity, for equality, for justice. There is the Zen Center North Shore that has become, I currently sit on the board of the Zen Center, so now I'm a Baptist Buddhist. But there's a Zen Center, North Shore Zen Center, that currently works, again, to hold elected officials accountable, to penetrate these systems. There's an organization building here in Peabody that is working to penetrate these systems. There are organizations, the Beverly Interfaith Coalition, there are organizations, there are institutions, there are people, there are groups that are working assiduously. A lot of the times, the big issue is, Jerry, some of these organizations do not have the financial resources or the white privilege that it takes to further the work. And that's where we all come in as a collective. Because I'll tell you this, Jerry, this color and the title Reverend Doctor, if you and I walk into the mayor's office, chances are he's gonna point to the chair, he's gonna ask you to sit, and he's gonna ask me to wait outside, and he'll be with me shortly. You know what I mean? You have a kind of privilege that unfortunately I don't have, and I don't think I will ever have in this lifetime. And that's where we need people on the North Shore who want to be honest and true about where they stand, understand that my truth doesn't necessarily have to be yours in order for you to stand with me and support my cause. None of us, and I can't say that enough, as corny as it sounds, none of us are really truly free and liberated if any of us are oppressed. And I think if I'm affected, if I'm impacted, the reason we're doing this, Jerry, and on Saturday, I asked you this question when we were on the phone. We had probably a 25-minute conversation on Saturday, and I asked you, and I don't think you even knew that this was kind of one of those questions where this speaker series, is it the pinnacle or is it the baseline of the work? Because that's important to me, because it's not enough for us to just talk and have meetings. And, I need to know that what we're doing, we're building a structure where we're getting people charged up. We're getting people ready to go out and to stand with our Black or brown or indigenous or LGBTQ plus communities, because these are the communities that are primarily impacted and affected by the gross injustice, the gross inequality, and the complete non-diversity, if you may, that exist and continue to penetrate our systems.
Oh, how well said. And for us, as I had said, it is our hope and that it's our plan, first of all, to this being the kickoff, and that we now take the year, and we're looking for you to guide us in a way of who are the people we need to engage with? And we've heard ECCO. Who else do we need to engage with to look for the places that we can help make a difference?
That's an amazing question, Jerry, and thank you for that. Here's the thing, the general rule of thumb: those closest to the pain should lead the work and be supported in leading the work. What we need to be doing, the times have passed where our white counterparts come into our communities and tell us what is good for us. We know what we need. We know what is good for us. We start with local conversations, visit our local congregations, go to our city halls, ask for certain things, see what the racial makeup of people that are making the decisions at City Hall, what those things look like. Seek out congregations, seek out organizations, local individuals that are doing the work. Again, and I know I've been pushing this button hard, ECCO is a great resource because ECCO reaches congregations all across the Essex County. ECCO reaches congregation all across the Essex County. ECCO knows almost every organization that is doing whatever parts of the work, because we have to understand as well that we don't have the time to just focus all of our attention on one thing. We have to now divide in order to build, not conquer, but to build. We have to divide in order to build. And this is why I say it's not good for us to start the wheel all over again. There might be racial justice teams and organizations in your various towns. Start having conversations with those people. There might not be a diversity person at City Hall. Find out why there isn't and what needs to happen. There might be certain congregations. Zion Baptist Church is one of those congregations that has a number of social programs that need support, that need funding. Reach out to your neighboring communities, and allow yourselves. Allow ourselves to be led by those that are most oppressed among us.
Very wise. We have some very good questions. So this one really stands out for me. You mentioned the talk you had with your own children that many Black parents have with their children. What are the most important messages in the talk white parents must have with their children about racism and racial justice?
That racism exists.
Simple enough.
That racism exists. It is not enough to say I have a Black friend. That in of itself is racist.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. That says it pretty quickly. Next one. Next question. If you had to pick one issue or action that would have the most impact in the country towards racial equity, what is it and why this issue or action?
I think our penal system, I think our criminal justice system need to be reformed. That's a huge undertaking. But for me, that's one of the things that I'm most passionate about. Reason being, that system is rigged against the communities of color. Black and brown communities are disproportionately targeted by law enforcement than white communities. When we think about just last week or week before last week, the verdict came down, the guilty verdict came down. The day when the verdict is being read, another Black teenage girl was being murdered by a police officer. And Jerry, here's the thing. I know we're going to hear all the things that she was charging at someone with a knife and she had a knife and blah, blah, blah. I'll give you two names, Kyle Rittenhouse and Dylan Roof. Kyle Rittenhouse and Dylan Roof. Those are two teenagers. They had guns. They murdered people. And police were called to the scene, but none of them was murdered.
Right.
The criminal justice system is rigged against people of color.
He was allowed to walk away.
One of them was taken to Burger King and bought a meal by police.
Can you speak to why such a large part of the civil rights movement of the last century and the current racial justice work finds such a natural home in the faith community, irrespective of religion?
Because of the word primarily faith. In my Christian tradition, faith is defined as the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. The substance of things that we hope for and the evidence of things that we haven't seen. The Black and the brown community for 400 plus years have been seriously oppressed and demonized. A whole empire was built on the shoulders of the Black community. And all we had to hold on to to get us through some of those rough times. And today is our faith that there is a better way. There is a brighter day, that there is a better way than this. And that's what built us. That's what kept us going. That's what kept us strong. And this is why the civil rights movement, this is why racial justice work is so deeply rooted in faith and in faith work and faith tradition, because all tradition believes in a greater power than oneself. It doesn't matter what that power is. All faith tradition believes that there's a greater power than what meets the eye. And we believe, we have faith, we have substance of hope that something better is ahead, that something better can be done. And that is evidenced by our continued persistence.
For me personally, when I look at the civil rights movement and I see Martin Luther King marching with rabbis, with priests, with ministers, to me that shows that our belief system needs to do more.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so let me ask you, I think I have time for at least one more question, okay? What would you like to see a partner congregation from a predominantly white community do that we are not yet doing? How should we stretch ourselves to an uncomfortable place?
I think it's easy for people to write a check sometimes. I think that's an easy task. I think it's much harder for us to give up something that brings us comfort. Money brings us comfort, right? But when we have a lot of it, we don't necessarily miss it. For a white congregation, writing a check of $10,000 to ECCO is nothing. For Zion Baptist Church, writing a check of $10,000 to ECCO means a few people will go unpaid for a couple of months. Well, and so that's usually the easy way out, is to write a check. But I think one of the things that I would love to see predominantly white congregations do in stepping outside of their comfort zone.
Okay, Andre, you just froze up. So unfortunately, we'll wait for a minute to see if he comes back.
The people there, be educated. Stop, I can't say this enough. Stop telling us that you know what we need. Stop telling us that you know what is best for us. We know what we need. We know what is best for us. Sit with us, listen, educate yourself, listen to us, hear what we're saying, and then lock arms with us, not just when we're marching and singing, but lock arms with us when we are fighting for legislative changes. Yes, you might like the person that you grew up next to, but look at his policies, look at his the positions that he takes, and then think about how it affects me and my children, and stand up to that. I think it's the hardest thing for us to challenge what we know to be comfortable.
Great. Okay, I'm going to try. We're almost out of time, but here's another question. Right, with your interfaith work with ECCO, what are some of the lessons and best practices we can learn from a unified and mobilized faith community to work together for racial justice?
That we all have individual and collective power. That's one of the things that I love more than anything about ECCO. It's that you won't at all times just see a Reverend Dr. Andre Bennett standing up and speaking or leading the charge or doing something or making legislative visits. Every individual has power, and our job is to help each of our siblings, each of our brothers and our sisters tap into their collective power. And to build themselves, to advocate for themselves, because that's one way that the system continues to hold us back. It's causing each of us to feel like we are powerless. causing most of us, some of us, to feel like we're powerless. And if we feel like we're powerless, we don't speak, we don't use our voice. And if I don't use my voice, you don't hear what I need. And if you don't hear what I need, then you can't do anything about my need, right? So I have to just take what you give to me. And I think that's one of the things that I admire the most about ECCO, about this interfaith work. I remember I used to pray at ECCO meetings, and I used to end my prayers all the time, in Jesus' name, amen. That's how I used to end all of my prayer. And I remember one day Rabbi Margie came over to me and she said, let me tell you, she said, I love when you pray. She said, your prayers are powerful. She said, but when you end it in Jesus' name, you close off the rest of us who are not Christians. We were right there with you, but then you just shut the door and you shut us out. And that for me was a huge learning moment. And I think those are the things that I really admire the most about the organization. It taps into each individual power and build a collective from there.
Reverend Andre, it has been a pleasure. I am so looking forward to continuing this walk with you and to seeing you in person, right? I mean, we do a lot of Zooms together, right? But I'm really looking forward to a time that actually that I can give you a big hug.
Absolutely, right? I'm holding you to that, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And I personally, I'm looking to continue this journey with us. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that this is not going to be a comfortable walk. It's not meant to be a comfortable walk. And like I told you in many of our private conversations, if we're just doing this because we feel like it's what we need to be, we should be doing in the moment. If it doesn't have deep rooted meaning to us, then we're not going to get very far. And so, together we're going to stretch, we're going to flex, and I'm looking forward to the day that we can embrace my brother.
Okay. Thank you so much, Andre. All right. And Barbara, good seeing you too. All right. And I'm going to turn it now over back to Barbara and Alan, and may we see each other soon.
May we see each other soon.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you so much, Reverend Andre, for leading us in this thoughtful, spiritual, and enlightening discussion. And of course, our heartfelt gratitude to Rabbi Michael, Reverend Dr. Andre Bennett, and Jerry Kreitzer for participating this evening, as well as to all of our speaker series committee members, Patricia Kreitzer, Keiko Zoll, Joel Green, Mimi Nelson Oliver, and Bev Kahn, who helped make this event possible. A special thank you to Barry Stein for all her hard work to make this series happen.
While tonight's event concludes our public speaker series, we have a special invitation to all members of the Congregation Shirat Hayam family. We invite our fellow CSH members to join us for a community Zoom meeting on Monday, May 3rd at 7:30 p.m. where we'll discuss moving from conversation to action at Shirat Hayam. In this Zoom meeting, we'll process what we've learned and share ideas about how to embed our commitment to racial justice as a temple community. Please join us for an engaging, interactive conversation facilitated by members of our Tzedek LaKol group. Please visit shirathayam.org to learn more and register for this special meeting just for our CSH family. Thank you all again for joining us, and have a great evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. And if I may say to Jerry and to Barbara, if you want to forward me the questions that we didn't get to, and I can try my hardest to answer them and get them back to you.
That would be great. Thank you, Reverend.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Be well.